can't unmute. Oh, there we go. Am I unmuted? All right. Thank you so much, Wendy. And thank you to the practice leadership for the invitation to speak tonight and next week. And I feel honored to be with you, to flow into Ango, peaceful abiding, and to be a part of the intimate conversation here with the jewel mirror of Samadhi. And so, as Wendy mentioned, I think part of what brings me here is a study of the jewel mirror Samadhi. Some versions look like this. And I made this 19 years ago or so when I was living at Tassajara. And I made it because it was the jewel mirror of Samadhi was the most mysterious thing we chanted to me. And so I devoted a summer to studying it, which is what I would do in those days at Tassajara. And at some point I decided, well, I'll make a character and translation study as a way to, engage with this text. And then in the kind of discipline and devotion and maybe a little obsession involved in this kind of thing, I feel a kind of ancestral connection to my family name, Pokorny, which in Czech and Polish has meanings like disciplined, humble, subservient, and servile. And I also feel a connection, an ancestral connection to Dungshan, and so the author of the jewel mirror Samadhi. And so Dungshan or Tozan is his mountain name, and his Dharma name is Liangjie or Ryokai, which means good servant or virtuous servant. And so I feel this resonance with being a servant, hopefully a good servant of the jewel mirror of Samadhi. And at the time when I made it, I thought, I thought it would just sit in the Tassajara library, but as a PDF, it's acquired a life of its own, which I'm delighted by. So I made it, I revised it for a few years, and then I went and got involved in a bunch of other study things. And so it's been a while since I've peeked inside of this thing. And so I appreciated, this chance to reconnect with this study and feel into the jewel mirror Samadhi, and also feel, a bit humbled at the prospect of giving these two talks. And I also feel a bit heartened because I feel like it's part of the spirit of the jewel mirror Samadhi and the spirit of Zen and the spirit of the study that there's no such thing as a definitive commentary or a final understanding. And because that's when the dharmic life of the song dies. So I think part of the wonder of the jewel mirror Samadhi is that it's kind of unwieldy, and out of control. And I kind of wanted the study to reflect that, actually. So I just assembled, these mandalas of translations and versions and commentaries, and just let it all sit there and just be a kind of conversation with itself, with anyone who enters it. And that's kind of conversation is how the Dharma lives. And this is our life. This is how awakening lives in the world. So however we might try to pin it down, the song says, the truth keeps on escaping, or in another translation, true eternity still flows. So whatever we express, reality constantly flows. And every moment of our life is meaningful in this way, in some way, uncapturable, unrepeatable, some way that's particular to the unbounded relationality of this moment and our participation in it. So caring for the Dharma of Suchness. So last week, Taigen pointed to I think he referred to them as two pivotal couplets in the text. And that actually, I appreciated that because I had a similar reflection. And so this week is looking at the first one, and next week look at the other one. So there's these opening lines. The Dharma of Vastness is intimately conveyed by Buddhas and ancestors. Now you have it. Keep it well. And so we have this kind of wonderfully vague term, vastness or suchness. The literal Chinese translation here, and the kind of standard one is, it literally means like this. And so it's very circular. It's like pointing without pointing, or like referring without specifying or defining or delimiting. And this right here is part of how we can care for a liberating truth that is ungraspable and also right here. And so Dharma of Vastness. So Dharma can mean teaching or truth or reality, and also method or practice. So this could be a teaching, a truth, a reality, and or a practice of thusness that's intimately conveyed, entrusted, given, communicated. And so now you have it, keep it well. And so keep here could be also protect or guard, shelter, maintain, nourish, assist. And what resonates for me is most is care, to care for it well. And as Taigen mentioned, the whole rest of the song can be looked at as just unfolding. How do we really care for this Dharma of Vastness? How do we care for the truth, practice, and teaching of thusness in our life with all beings? And so for the remainder of this talk, I want to speak to three maybe intertwining aspects of how we can care for this Dharma of thusness or suchness. So one is embodied realization, two is inquiry, and three is communal relational practice. So starting with the embodied practice realization. So practice realization is this key teaching of Dogen. And so basically, rather than practice being something I do to move towards awakening and finally attain awakening, this is just practice as the practice of awakening. And so in Genjo Koan, Dogen kind of offers a sort of reflection of now you have it when he says, Dharma is already correctly transmitted. You are immediately your original self. And so immediately, so no mediation. And this is a key idea in Zen. And it's a key import of sudden. Zen sometimes calls itself the sudden school. And one of the key senses of sudden is this no mediation. And it's sort of the depth of Zen, and it's also kind of a challenge of Zen. And so cutting through mediation, cutting through an instrumental or transactional approach to practice the path, awakening. Cutting through the tendency to do something for the sake of something else, or the idea of awakening as a goal, or awakening as something that, some graspable way is different from what I grasp as this. Pushing for results. So practice realization is the practice of now you have it. Sometimes we say Zazen as Buddha's sitting, or Zazen as the embodied expression of Buddha's awakening. And practice realization is a path. And I would say attaining awakening or a breakthrough. These happen on a path, but they're not the path. Experience is not a path. A path is a practice of what we do, how we live, how we actualize awakening in our lives together, in our myriad relations. And one of the kind of issues or problems that can come up with the 5 ranks is that the 5 ranks can sound like a progression or a hierarchy. And then progression and hierarchy can often become reductive. The higher can reduce and minimize the lower, or the goal can reduce or devalue the means, the path, each step on the path, each moment of this life. So practice realization it's also a really deep affirmation of this moment of practice. And I also feel this as the spirit of now you have it, to really value and honor the life of practice right here. It's not for something else. It's not to get somewhere else, and it's not to become someone else. The title of the song, the Jewel Mirror Samadhi, refers to a samadhi. And samadhi can be translated as concentration, is probably the most typical, or absorption, sometimes more broadly as awareness. And I feel like in the context of like Soto Zen, I feel pretty. I don't want to feel that samadhi. I don't want to offer samadhi as a mental factor or a mental state associated with realization or awakening, because I feel like it kind of plays into a frame that separates mind and body. So I want to offer a samadhi as an awake body, heart, and mind, and zazen as an embodied communal enactment of awakening. And so rather than, kind of an individualistic thing or an internal thing, the samadhi of the precious mirror as radically relational, completely relational, and embodied, whole being, and an awakening to, or an actualization of, the ungraspable, unbounded extent of our relationality. And bringing it, demonstrating it, embodying it, bringing it forth in our life together. In Genjo of Genjo Koan, it can mean like realize or manifest, or actualize. And another translation I'm really into right now is presencing. And so I feel that that can be a way to hear samadhi, presencing this dynamic jewel mirror. And so zazen or samadhi or practice realization are not confined to being cognitive events, but embodied whole being engagement. And so in our practice of zazen, being still, being upright, not just the container for the real meditation, which is a mind thing, because zazen's not about enacting this split of body and mind. Hee-Jin Kim talks about actional understanding. So we could have understanding that we think of as a mental event, but there's an understanding in the doing, in the action, actional understanding, wholeheartedly engaging, whole body, heart, and mind activity of sitting. as an expression of awakening, as the Genjo koan, as presencing the koan, as presencing the Dharma of Vastness. So I feel in this now you have it, keep it well, like the fundamental spirit of Soto Zen. And I feel it as like a devotional thing. and kind of in that caring, not just apprehending or getting the idea, but how we care for it. Caring rather than like attaining, or giving or rather than getting. And the Dharma of Vastness is we don't make it happen. We care for it. And it brings us to practice. And it brings us through practice. It's our actual heart of connection. And yearning, wanting us to kind of get with reality, with the ultimate reality of our life. Ask not what the jewel mirror samadhi can do for me, but what can I do for the jewel mirror samadhi? So I feel this reflected in a koan in the Book of Serenity, case 94. Dungshan, our star, is unwell. And a monk asked, "You are ill, teacher, but is there anyone who does not get ill?" And Dungshan said, "There is." And the monk said, "Does the one who is not ill look after you?" Dungshan said, "I have the opportunity to look after him." And the monk said, "How is it when you look after him?" And Dungshan said, "Then I don't see that he has any illness." And so, in this story, I hear Dungshan is liberated in his illness, caring for the Dharma of Vastness. And caring for the Dharma of Vastness, being wholeheartedly himself, being fully not well. Not being saved by the Dharma of Vastness from his illness, and somehow escaping or being extricated, but completely in it. So practice realization or actional understanding. Filling a silver bowl with snow, hiding a heron in the moonlight. And so I think this is this is often said to be about neither the same nor different. If I'm the same as the Dharma of Vastness, why would I suffer? If I'm different from the Dharma of Vastness, how could I be liberated? And so this is a non-duality, and it's dynamic. And practice is working with this non-duality that won't ever settle into a final truth proposition. The reality constantly flows. The truth keeps on escaping. And I feel like something lively about sameness and difference together in harmony. That a meaningful relationship, involves sameness and difference. If there's no difference, there's no other to be in relation with. If there's no sameness, there's no connection. So this practice realization is a non-dual approach. And this is also how we live with the massive fire. So the song says, turning away and touching are both wrong. Separating and identifying are both wrong. You are not it, yet it is you. And dynamism, dropping off, of letting go, of deconstruction, and also embodiment, demonstration, manifestation, expression. We could also say a liberation from constructs, and also creative and imaginative engagement with constructs. All the forms of practice in Soto Zen, care for the Dharma of Suchness. So a web of total mutual intersupportiveness of awakening and all forms of practice, like zazen, dharma talks, doksan, ritual, bowing, confession, chanting, dedication, and also in everyday life, in action, in any action, in how we handle anything, in any act of kindness. And all of this is a challenge or a lifelong engagement because of the depth and extent of grasping and delusion, and how they become elaborated and interwoven into our views, reactivity, and action, or karma. And so this is invoked, in various ways in the jewel mirror samadhi. Miss, and you fall into confusion and doubt, a hair's breadth deviation, and you are out of harmony, sitting still yet inwardly moving like a tethered colt or a trapped rat. According to their delusions, they call black as white. Failure to serve is of no help. And so in this, in practice realization, we don't ignore or suppress or destroy or deny delusion and grasping. It's a practice of intimacy and intimate presence. And so it's a gentle and kind and accepting, welcoming intimacy, and also a thorough intimacy. So working and thoroughly feeling with care, through pain, through trembling, through fear, grasping, and groping. So meeting all this, meeting our stuff, this part of our life with soft eyes and a soft heart and a soft belly. And I feel this, resonating with Dogen and Genjo Kon when he says, Buddhas have great realization of delusion. So Zazen is this embodied enactment of awakening, intimately and dynamically feeling into the fullness of grasping and greed, hate, and delusion, and not to get past it, but as the realizational activity of awakening. So embodied presence, full, warm, and awakening, and fully including suffering in presencing the truth. And this is a process. This is a process of healing and release with many layers, many layers of confusion, doubt, hair's breadth deviation, inwardly moving, calling black as white. And so kind of, in some ways, a very simple practice, can fill myriad lifetimes because grasping and delusion are so deep and elaborated. So turning to inquiry, as questioning, curiosity, a process of opening as an activity of not knowing, or as the active function of not knowing. could be an enlivening sense of doubt. I practice at my edges, at my limits, and the basic spirit of actually looking. And also as including creativity and imagination as functions of awakening, seeking to actualize awakening. And I see this as exploratory, because it's the genuine, open-ended inquiry. It doesn't know what it's inquiring into or towards. And it's dynamic because it can open through or across any way I might try to direct it. Because it's, it's looking at like, well, who's directing this and where are they directing it towards? That's part of the inquiry. Last week, Taigen mentioned how Dongshan took leave of his teacher, Yun, and went on a journey, and carrying some doubt about his teacher's parting gift, this teaching of just this is it, or just this person. And so eventually he saw his reflection in the creek and his doubt unfolding into the song of the jewel mirror Samadhi. But I've heard between when he left his teacher and when he saw his reflection, he visited a monastery, and the phrase that I heard, it was from a Chinese scholar, is that Dongshan questioned the head monk to death. So anyway, I hear this, I bring this up as something about the depth of his inquiry, speaking to the depth of Dongshan's questioning spirit. There's a line that says, the meaning is not in the words, yet one pivotal instant can reveal it. And the translation I would recite in my training was, the meaning is not in the words, yet it responds to the inquiring impulse. So the meaning is not in the words like the Dharma of Vastness, or now you have it. And the Dharma of Vastness is not a static meaning to grasp, but it lives with my inquiry, with my wholehearted engagement. And the Dharma of Vastness has no life or function in the world apart from practice and actualization. If I hold back from the world and this moment, the world holds back from me. And when I give myself completely to this moment, the world gives itself to me. So inquiry is arriving at the pivot of this moment. Or it's a key, to how any moment is this like one pivotal instance. And so I feel caring for the Dharma of Vastness in caring for a spirit of deep inquiry and, cultivation of curiosity or questioning or opening. And, there might be moments of like resolution and letting resolution go, or that, what was clear in the last moment is not what I need to clarify in this moment. And letting inquiry become very deep and very full. And sitting in the fire of, this generative inquiry. Connecting to the deepest seeking or the inmost request of my heart. And if I know what I'm looking for, I'm not really looking. So appreciating a vitality of uncertainty and becoming more interested in what can open than what can be figured out. And, becoming a radical learner. And inquiry, is all ever expanding, like always allowing for more complexity versus like reductive or limiting or simplifying. So resisting the seduction of reduction, but a process of opening and including. And all inclusiveness being this a reality, but not one we ever actually get. And so it's always a question, it's always opening. And engaging inquiry, not to get somewhere, but as an activity of awakening. And I like the expression inquiring impulse, because I feel like, this inquiry can include questions, verbal questions, but also a quality of presence, or a curiosity. A curiosity, the limits of what I can see or feel or sense or meet or express or question. And intimacy itself as a process of inquiry. What is here? Am I fully present? Is this wholeheartedness? So inquiry, I offer as a challenging, grasping, and limited views in all forms. And part of how it's important to practice together is it's hard to maintain the dynamism of true inquiry by myself. So this brings us to the last thing last kind of dimension I want to bring up here of communal relational practice. And in a way, I want to bring up Sangha or community because, it may not show up so clearly in the jewel mirror of Samadhi, but I feel it's really vital to how we care for the Dharma of Vastness and the offering of the jewel mirror of Samadhi. And so, again, coming back to this term Samadhi, that in Soto Zen, I would offer the jewel mirror Samadhi as a social Samadhi or communal relational Samadhi. And I see this pertaining, to the communal practice of Zazen at the core of the tradition, and reaching out, in myriad ways to how we enact the Bodhisattva vow, or presencing the Dharma of Vastness in everyday relational compassion and kindness. And so I see a dynamic, non-dual relationality as a clear and kind of core theme of the jewel mirror Samadhi. That I feel this urge to bridge into communal aspects of Soto practice, to how we practice together, to how we happen together in practice. And so, relationality is sort of like all through the jewel mirror Samadhi, like the snow in the silver bowl, the heron in the moonlight, the form and image behold each other. You are not it, it actually is you. Drumming and singing go together. Arrow points meet head on. When the wooden man begins to sing, the stone woman gets up to dance. Ministers serve their lords, children obey their guardians. And, Zen koans can be looked at as an embodiment of how awakening in Zen is social or relational. So koans are these interactions where it's the meeting that is pivotal, a dynamic human encounter. And I see koans as shared inquiry. And they're kind of like, I think they're kind of held up as especially dramatic exemplifications of the dynamism of Sangha, of practicing together, to help us appreciate something radical about everyday moments of Sangha and everyday moments of awakening, something intangible that pervades everyday moments of just being ourselves in intimate exchange. So we have the practice of chanting together, including the jewel mirror of Samadhi. And so we practice this song as liturgy, chanting it together. And chanting it together, it soaks into us, and its words and images circulating through us, learning it by heart, and then bringing it to life with shared voices again and again, with living communal engagement. And there's a shared inquiry in chanting together. Harmonization involves a communal inquiry of finding a pitch together, finding a pace, a tone, energy, spirit. And it's an ongoing shared inquiry of attuning and reattuning. You can start with one pitch, but then the pitch can change and the pace can change. And it's something everybody's just doing together. And I also feel shared inquiry in bowing. When you really meet in a bow, like finding the bottom of the bow together. Or making eye contact. Finding the reciprocal contact. Showing up together at a point of meeting. And there's a mutually tuning in. And I feel Sangha is this field of inquiry where my inquiry and your inquiry can intertwine. And my inquiring presence and intimacy and wholeheartedness is ongoing and endlessly deepened and broadened, supported and challenged by your inquiry, where your opening presence and responsiveness is ongoingly and endlessly deepened and broadened, supported and challenged by my inquiry, my opening, my embodiment. So inquiring into the Dharma of Vastness as communal or social, because this I am not it, yet it is me, or also I am not it, I am not you, yet you are also me. And so Sangha practice as simply and also more and more fully, sharing a moment together, sharing a vivid sense of being this moment together, where there is reciprocity, or together, a being togetherness that's more basic than pieces of information moving from X to Y, but an interplay of presence. And an immediate and mutual sense in which we are shaping and transforming each other. And so drumming and singing go together. The drummer and the singer listening and attuning to each other and negotiating the moment together in a process of shared inquiry. And this is all really easy to overlook from an individualistic mindset. So Sangha is flowing together and decentering me from what's happening and becoming just a part of what's happening. Or decentering me as the generating nexus of experience and action, evaluation and control, and becoming part of what's happening. And I think for Dogen, it's a key point that no one really practices alone. So liberation is, opening to how deeply my life is involved with everyone I meet and impact. Our freedom is, interpersonal rather than, individualistic. And, Zen it's not a private experiential thing, but a intimately social thing. And this presencing, all presencing is relational. Presencing the Dharma of Vastness. To show up is always to show up in relation, in the shared space of our life. All space is shared space. What I do is always actually happening in a shared space, a shared process of collective relational inquiry. And this can be in person, where we deeply value body-to-body practice. And Zoom is nothing. You can share something of the moment, through these audio-visual devices. And so the last thing I want to bring up here is just that, and I'll say more about this next week probably. About 20 years ago, I went on a pilgrimage to China, and we went apparently to the spot in the creek where Dongshan saw his reflection. There was some kind of marker there to tell you that that's where you were. And just a few hundred yards from that spot is where he founded a monastery. And so I just felt this kind of connection there, kind of the dynamism of this moment with the creek and grounding Dongshan right there. So right at that creek, settling down, his pilgrimage was over, and now he's developing a community of shared inquiry, devoted to caring for the Dharma of Vastness, or presencing the Dharma of Vastness, engaging a communal embodied demonstration of the jewel mirror of Samadhi. So that's what I have to offer tonight. Thank you all very much. Take good care.